Keith Weber. I'm an Air Force ROTC cadet. Before we get started here, I'd like to make one quick announcement. Tomorrow evening, Major General Dees will be giving a presentation to people who are in the military, and this is a military-only kind of invite. So if you're in the Guard, the Reserve, you're in ROTC, you're active duty, or if you're even retired, there's some flyers out here on this table right outside this door. Grab one of those on your way out. We'd love to have you come tomorrow evening. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking some time and coming out here tonight. Tonight's talk is going to be about the global war on terror. Is it really worth it? We're excited to have Major General Dees come up here and talk. Major General Dees has served in a variety of command positions. Most recently, he's been the commander of the 2nd Infantry Division, U.S. Forces, Korea. He was also the Deputy Commanding General of 5th Corps in Europe. He has also served as an executive in the Microsoft company, and he is currently serving as the Executive Director of Military Ministries, Campus Crusade International. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Major General Dees.
Well, hi. Thanks. Good to be here. I'm going to wander around a bit, and I think they may be taping this or not. I don't know. If not, or you are, okay, and you've got a mic, permit us just one moment. They're going to take me off of this tether so I can wander around. If you would attach that, just
Put one into your belt and one
right
into your
now.
tie.
If you would put it on
Test it.
We're testing everyone's ears here. Man,
You got this one shut off then?
probably. How's that? Does that work? Okay, nice. We're going to, I know you're going to have some really good questions later, so we wanted to get those on tape. No, I'm kidding. It's good to be at Iowa State. I wore a tie. I was told that all of you would be in ties tonight. That shows how gullible I am. No, I'm kidding. I wore it, but if you'll notice, it's red. It's got a big yellow in it. So that's the good news. I'm trying. Okay, I get some credit for trying to wear the school colors. And I went back into the Colonel Pride Lounge. Has anybody been in the Colonel Pride Lounge? Okay, some of you may not know that. Do I need to do something here? Okay. Thanks. We'll use those later. For you that haven't been in the Colonel Private Lounge, you just go out this little hallway here, and it's a little private area. Colonel Pride is the grandfather of one of our staff members that I work with now on a daily basis. Her name is Nita Pride, and Nita Pride gave me a biography of her grandfather. Her grandfather was responsible for raising the funds for this whole building. He was a student at Iowa State. He was a World War I veteran. He came to Iowa State as a student, and then he quit. He went to World War II. He did that, and then he was in the Korean War for a short time. And I would classify him as a great American. So it was interesting to walk down the hall and to see the Colonel Pride Lounge down there that commemorates all of that service on his part. Okay, you want me to do this? Okay, and then we'll do this. Here.
Yeah.
We're going to get going. Has anybody looked at this? We okay? That's one, two. This is all part of our rehearsal. tired of studying and doing your homework, you can go in this training room and you can bounce to your heart's content. Now, isn't that neat? Now, would you like that? She said yes. Has anybody looked at the slide up here? You've seen the title of the lecture. We'll talk about that in a minute. The slide says, what in the world is going on? If you're observing the same world I'm observing, there's lots of weird things happening. There's lots of contradictions. There's lots of Muslim students in North Carolina running over other students with an SUV. There's things like Abu Ghraib. There's things like children killing children in American schools, Columbine, and other places in the United States. We are in a strange period of time. We're seeing a lot of violence. We're seeing a lot of tug of war back and forth. And I just give you this. You also see on there 9/11, and you see something called GWOT. What does that stand for? That's the official acronym. You know, everybody's good at creating acronyms. Global War on Terror. That's you'll hear about GWOT a lot, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Is global war on terror. So I guess you have a bit of an interest in that, and my title of this is Why Bother. I've seen some other titles about is it worth it? Same type of me. Is it worth it? Why bother? Is it more pain? Why are we doing this? And those are some of the things I want to discuss tonight. Let me blow your mind out with another thing first. Jim, if you go to the next slide here. Can you read this? This is a construction site in Dubai, UAE. What do you figure that is? Is that a space launch facility? Or it says proton accelerator? What do you figure it is? A shopping center? Okay, next slide. Here's more of it. It really is an engineering marvel. Look at this. Look at the palm trees. And reminder that it's in Dubai, 120 degrees, desert heat, pretty incredible, huh? What do we figure it is? Okay, next slide. It's a ski slope. You go inside, ski Dubai, chairlift, ski slope, 120 degrees palm trees outside. Isn't that amazing? Okay, next one. Okay, what's your own caption for this next one? Here's another. That could be Cy right there, I guess. They had somebody else, but that could be your mascot right there. Okay, and there are folks out there enjoying and walking up the ski slope and things. What's your caption for this? If you can read that, you say, wow, I want to go with that. That's the ninth wonder of the world. I'd like to ski there. Or you can also say, I wonder if they also run courts. What's that alluding to? That's alluding to the Dubai court controversy that we just had. Should Dubai, UAE, should they run courts in the United States? How about conspicuous consumption? We talk a lot about the West driving SUVs that consume all this oil. There's others that might say this represents conspicuous consumption. How about the price of oil? How about the world of extremes and contradictions? I think the theme continues. The world of extremes and contradictions, and probably no one here would disagree with that. Next slide. This is what I would title as a global war on terror hypothesis. Try again here. All right. I'll go back to the next slide. Go back. Okay, press back. Press back.
Did he work or exercise?
But that's an IBM computer, so I don't know. Global war on terror. Think about the words. What does global mean? Global means global. Okay? I don't want to be too pedantic here, but global means global. Global means inclusive. Global means the whole enchilada. Global doesn't mean Iraq. Global doesn't mean a specific locale. Global means global. And we'll talk about that. What does war mean? War means something that is serious. It's probably about national survival for somebody in this case, and we'll see for the United States included. Global war on what? Terror. What's terrorism all about? Terrorism about war. Terrorism is a form of war. That's fair. I would offer that terrorism is an asymmetric form of warfare. Asymmetric meaning pitting strength against weakness. What is the weakness of somebody like the United States or Western culture? The weakness is probably our spirit. Weakness is probably our ability to keep on keeping on. Our ability to sustain an effort under tough conditions. One of the weaknesses of democracy, and yet one of the strengths of democracy. Global war on terror. The terror, we'll talk about later, attacks the human spirit, the human soul. It attacks our ability to keep on keeping on. You see here, it says Major General U.S. Army retired. That's a nice bumper sticker, but let me tell you what that means. I saw wonderful Americans, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and their families serve our country. And so it was my privilege to be a leader in that regard. It was also my privilege to see a lot of world events from the inside out. I'll talk about some of those tonight. One of those we didn't mention is that I was the commander of the U.S.-Israeli Joint Task Force for Missile Defense to protect Israel from Scuds from Syria and from Iraq. It's pretty interesting to live inside Israel, to work with the Israeli armed forces, and to understand some of their perspectives and the challenges that they work under. Okay, what's our game plan for tonight? We're going to talk a bit about this topic, global war on terror. Then I'll go to questions and answers. We'll tell a few Microsoft stories if you want to along the way, a bit more about that. Tell military stories if you want to about that. And then we'll do a wrap and we're out of here. Sound good? Sound good. Okay. She's my helper here. What's your name? Anita. Okay, Anita's going to help me. All right, so next slide. I like to have the bottom lines up front. And the first bottom line is that evil empires have plagued peace and freedom-loving peoples over the course of history. Evil empires is the point. And oh, by the way, I'll clue you in, because your school colors are yellow plus red, yellow at the bottom of any slide is the foot stomper. That's what Anita's going to write down to help her get ready for the test at the end of this. Okay, so if you see yellow, those are the bottom lines I've tried to extract out for you. But the first one up here is that evil empires. My wife and I were in the KGB headquarters in Vilnius, Lithuania. We were with Father Slovenius, who's known as the face of Lithuania. Father Slovenius was put in the KGB headquarters in Vilnius for 9 months. He showed us room number 9, where he lived. And then he took us down to the next tier, the next basement. He showed us the torture chambers. He showed us the pedestals that people would stand on, and then they would fill the room with freezing water up to the neck until the person became delirious and would say anything, would recant anything, just to be relieved of the pain. And then he took us to the next level down. He showed us the execution chamber. He showed us where they had carved out some of the rock in the very basement of that building so that the blood would flow out more quickly. My wife turned to me and she said, "You know what? Ronald Reagan was right." And what she was alluding to was Ronald Reagan talked about there being evil empires in this world. The Soviet Union was an evil empire. There are evil empires in this world, and we need to recognize that at some point in time, we have difficulty in not classifying something an evil empire that needs to be dealt with. The Nazis became apparently an evil empire that needed to be dealt with. Saddam Hussein, mass graves, an evil empire. The killing fields of Cambodia, an evil empire. Uganda, Idi Amin, an evil empire. Sometimes in this world, it's not relative. We read a lot that would make us think everything is relative. We hear a lot of media that would sometimes make us think that we're the evil empire. But when you compare countries like the United States and Britain and other democracies versus the killing fields of Cambodia, we've got to get a grip and recognize there truly are evil empires. So that's an important point, that we recognize that, because I'm going to tell you, suggest that Al-Qaeda and the radical extreme Islamists comprise an evil empire. Hear my words carefully. I'm choosing them carefully. I didn't say anything about Islam. I said, however, that we have an evil empire, and I'll talk more to that. The enemy is real. Well, secondly, we are in a world war. I talked about that, and I'll show you some maps and things. It's called the Global War on Terror, and whether we want it or not, we are inextricably involved. When Osama bombed the World Trade Center in 1993, we were involved as the United States. When Osama bin Laden was involved in Mogadishu in 1994 in Somalia, we were involved. When the U.S. embassies in East Africa were bombed, we were involved. So the point is, whether we wanted to be or not, we became quickly involved as we have been attacked abroad and at home by terrorists. The enemy is real, stakes are high. We'll talk about that. Religion and spiritual issues are central to the global war on terror. We have political correctness, if you will, and we have free expression in our country, freedom of religion. The reality, though, is that religion and spiritual issues are integral to this whole global war on terror, what I will soon call World War III. And as a result, if you're going to deal with it, if you're going to get your mind around it, you've got to wrestle with the spiritual implications, the implications of religion. I brought a couple of books. This first book is called From 911 to 666. And you might think that it would be on the shelf of some Christian person, perhaps, that believes in prophecy and this and that. This comes off the bookshelf of the General Officer in charge of War on Terror on the United States Joint Staff. Why is that? Because our U.S. Joint Staff, our military planners at the highest level, recognize they've got to understand the issues much better. And our intelligence has not made us culturally astute about Islam, about radical fundamentalists, and our Joint Staff planners are reading like crazy to understand this. Now, isn't that interesting? That's probably not what we would have thought the Joint Staff planners were reading today. There's another one, this one's of interest. I talked to you, a couple of you about it. It's called Disinformation. Disinformation. You may have heard the quote that says, the first casualty of war is truth. So this has 22 prevailing myths about the war on terror. Pretty interesting. And I talked to some of you that are journalism majors. Okay, let me get back on game plan here. And so we said it's a holy war. It's important to know what we believe, why we believe, and then corporately, how that applies. Then it says it's a long war. It's been going on for about 30 years, in fact 27 years, since the failure of the Iran hostage rescue operation in 1979 is when most people peg the start of the global war on terror. That's a long time ago. 27 years it's been going on. And when you see how pervasive it is, you'll see that for part of this, we have been like the proverbial frog in boiling water. It heats and it heats and it heats. And now we find we're in the middle of this thing called global war on terror. It wasn't global 27 years ago, but it certainly is now. Okay. Finally, national survival. It depends upon our sustained response. Sustained response, and you'll hear President Bush, you'll hear any politician recognizing that when we went into Bosnia Bosnia did not become a democratic, free, peace-loving country overnight. But now, 15 plus years into Bosnia, there is a modicum of freedom in that country. Women are not being tortured. I went in after the Kosovo War in 1998. I went into Kosovo. I walked in the basement of a police station, and I tripped across a rape and torture room where the female garments were still piled in the corner. Now, I hope this doesn't offend anybody's sensibilities, but the point is that was another evil empire. But now, if you go to Kosovo, little children walking with their mothers to school, Muslims and Orthodox getting along together generally. You have an outburst here and there, but so is it in Chicago, Illinois. So if you were to evaluate Kosovo the day after the war ended, you would say it's never going to turn around. And yet, sustained response by the United States and other allies has brought a modicum of peace to Bosnia, has brought a modicum of peace to Kosovo, and the good news is, I think, if we stay the course, we are able to do the same thing. We have the potential to do the same thing in Iraq, which can be a freedom-loving, democratic country in the middle of the Middle East. Okay, that's next one, please. Now let's get into it. You see, okay, we got a yellow thing here. And Anita says, all right, she's writing furiously. Evil empires do exist, and in the global war on terror, we face an evil empire, and what are the consequences of inaction? I'm going to postulate that this is World War III we're in, but let's look at World War II. In World War II, what happened? The Nazis started rolling. Hitler came into the power in the early 30s. In the late 30s, he started invading countries. The United States stuck their head in the sand. Neville Chamberlain of Britain established this doctrine of appeasement. Where did we find ourselves in 1941? In 1941, we found ourselves attacked by Pearl Harbor. In 1941, we found that the French were being chased out, the Brits were being chased out of France, that we were on roller skates in reverse, and it looked dismal. It looked like Nazi Germany and Japan would truly, and Italy would truly conquer the whole world. And we were fighting for our very survival. What was the cost of that? 300,000 U.S. lives lost. 300,000. I don't know what the population of Ames is. Is it about 300,000? Or maybe that's 2 Ames, 3 Ames, 4 Ames, 6 Ames. Just picture in your own mind 6 Ames, line them up. 300,000 people in World War II. 70 million worldwide. Think of 70 million people. That's 1/3 of the United States killed in a world war. Why? Because we did not nip it in the bud. And then U.S. Reconstruction, there's a lot of discussion about costs, $90 billion over 4 years, and 1% of the GDP per year for 4 years. That's significant, I think you'll agree. And so what's the lesson learned there? World War II, we look back. There's a British philosopher, Santana, that says, those who fail to learn the lessons of history are what? Destined to repeat them. So we need to learn lessons of history from World War II, and we see the challenges here. And the question at the bottom there, what are the consequences of inaction? We see the consequences of inaction in World War II. Now, what are the consequences of inaction in World War III? Okay, Jim. Y'all are, anybody here geography majors? What would be the closest thing to a geography major? I'm not sure. Anybody hear the news today? What's happening in France? Okay, we have student riots in France. So a month ago, 2 months ago, we had other riots in France. So those are more directly related to Islamic students in France that were disaffected. And these current riots, they seem to have other protest objectives, but it's really hard to know. So France, Western Europe. What about the Muslim cartoons? Certainly that was not a proper respect for the religion of Islam. However, it occurred 3 months or 6 months earlier, and all of a sudden there was this outburst of rioting around the world. Holland to Pakistan. In Pakistan, the McDonald's, the Walmarts of the world were smashed and burned, and every U.S. or Western symbol was attacked because of the cartoons. Quite a violent and radical response to something that had been on the street for 3 to 6 months. In Africa, Omar Gaddafi, he has a plan called 2020 to, quote, evangelize, that's his term, sub-Saharan Africa for Islam by the year 2020 through the military. And so now he used to fly to the African peace conferences, now he drives to the African peace conferences in convoys of about 50 SUVs. And they'll come with a lot of money, they'll build a mosque, they'll coerce the people, frankly, and then they'll even go to another place. And if we're talking about radical Islam, then guess what? If the people that signed up decide that they don't really want to anymore, guess what happens? They get killed, and that's the challenge we see with the person in the headlines today in Afghanistan. Okay, now, it's in Africa, it's in Europe, it's in the Far East. You're aware of the counterterrorism in the Philippines. We have U.S. forces in the Philippines right now. You're aware of North Korea. North Korea is the most insular, darkest place on this earth. The people are eating bark many times for sustenance. You have North Korean parents that are selling their children to Chinese merchants for bags of rice because of the starvation conditions. It is difficult in Korea. That is another evil empire. What's the point? We've got some challenges on that side of the world. The world is bubbling. And if you look at the common denominator, we'll talk a bit about that in just a minute. You see the ongoing military missions? Isn't it interesting that one moment a soldier picks up a rifle and the next moment he picks up a first aid kit? One moment he's shooting a terrorist, the next moment he's carrying an enemy combatant to the U.S. aid station to give him compassionate care. Our soldiers are living in that world, and they're doing these things like building capacity, meaning helping other nations build their resistance to terrorism. All the way down to educate and train, economic development. There's a lot of diplomacy in there that our U.S. military forces are doing worldwide. And why are they doing it worldwide? Because these events are bubbling around the world. And it has us stretched as a military, frankly, in more countries. So the U.S. Army is in over 190 countries this day. A large part of that is devoted to helping quell the war on terror in various forms that you see here. Global war on terror has been going on for several decades. The United States did not start it, it says here. And, oh, by the way, it's a global conflict. It's World War III. Next slide. Okay, so who's the enemy? You've heard of it. Al-Qaeda is the enemy. They're the most dangerous. The enemy, as it says, consists of various extremist Islamic groups that espouse the use of violence to achieve their ideological aims. President George Bush, until October of this year, did not use the word Islamic when he described terrorists. He made a decision, the administration made a decision in October to connect the war on terrorism to a certain part of Islam. And as it says here, it says extremist Islamic groups. What are their characteristics? You're familiar with them. You're most familiar with the fact that they're absolutely committed to their cause. Religious ideology attracts recruits, you see here. And then finally, they have a sufficient population base around the world. They attract people. What is it that causes a Palestinian mother to rejoice when her 3 sons have just gone to become martyrs as suicide bombers? What causes that? Well, it's this ideology that indoctrinates people. As many would say, it's a typical Marxist indoctrination technique that has been used for decades and, in fact, hundreds of years around the world. The enemy is real, the stakes are high. Next, please. Okay, what are these guys saying? Well, up on the top, is that guy familiar? Okay, that's Osama. If you saw some of the news today, it's interesting. Well, why haven't we killed him? The Democrats came out with a new initiative today. Let's kill Osama. Well, that's not a new idea. However, it's interesting to think of all the political implications. Osama, probably on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. If you kill him, what happens to Musharraf in Pakistan? Is his ability to govern there destabilized? Do they become a radical government that, oh, by the way, already have nuclear weapons? So when Colin Powell had a rule that said, be careful what you ask for because you may get it. Well, if we ask for Osama's death, but if it's at the expense of the Pakistani government and loyalty to our nation and democracy, it's not a very good trade-off. So is it better to keep Osama hedged in and limit his capabilities? Or is it better to kill him with Musharraf's support and yet cause the potential fall of the Musharraf government? So these are complex issues these days, not simple issues. You got this next guy, al-Zawahiri, who's the number 2 in command. Many people think he's really calling the shots now. He says things like, the Islamic nation which sent you the New York and Washington brigades has taken the firm decision to send you successive brigades to sow death and aspire to paradise. And I didn't read Osama. He says, acquiring chemical and nuclear weapons for the defense of Muslims is a religious duty. And then now you get down to Zarqawi, who you've heard about, who's running the operation, the Al-Qaeda operation in Iraq. And he says, oh, Allah killed them one after the other, sparing none. Who's he talking about? He's talking about the infidels. Who are the infidels? I suspect most of the people in this room are infidels. Because you're not of the Islam persuasion. Some of you may be, but those that are not Islam in this room are infidels. And so what does he say? He says, kill everyone in this room. And then finally, how can we rescue Jerusalem when we have no base from which to set out? What does he mean about rescue Jerusalem? He means the elimination of the nation of Israel. So he just wants to wipe out a whole race of people. And they've said, until every Jew is killed on this earth, we've not done our sacred duty to Allah. That's what we're dealing with. Okay, next please. Well, terrorists. Is that all there is? No, there's another problem. Let's call it Iran. You have state-sponsored terrorism, and you have a state that is in fact short of going nuclear, and a state that has proclaimed some pretty bizarre things. Up here you say 17 September last year, President Ahmadinejad, somebody may be able to pronounce that better, he spoke at the UN, he attacked the U.S. and Israel, and basically he has said in this forum and other forums that he wants to destroy Israel, he wants to destroy the United States, he wants to go nuclear, and he has, over on the right, there's a good source, there's a reference, and these slides will probably be hung on some website that you will have reference to. Islamic eschatology. Some of you may know more about it than I do, but in Islam, there's something called the 12th Imam. The Shias in particular believe in the 12th Imam, who was born, they think, sometime in the 600s, who they think is still living. He's called the Hidden Imam and will soon reappear. They, in their doctrine, can hasten his reappearance by creating violence and chaos around the world. In other words, by executing jihad, by killing infidels and creating chaos, they can They can speed up their eschatology timelines. Isn't that interesting that the president of a country, a huge country, is making these claims and believes this? So we have a challenge not just with terrorists and Al-Qaeda, but we have a challenge with people like Iran. When I was in that Israeli position, I was in Israel in January of 2002. I was called to go down near the Dead Sea, or near the Red Sea. The Israelis had just apprehended the Karina A ship. The Karina A ship was found to be an Iranian ship. It had hundreds of tons of weapons on it that were in high technology ballasts that they would dump off of the ship. These ballast Katyusha rockets and mortars and things would float 6 feet under the water. They would dump it off the Gaza Strip, and the fishermen come out, and they gather with their nets, and then they drag it into many caves within Gaza to use against the Israelis and support the Hamas, and also Hezbollah was involved in this. Well, isn't that interesting? What was the source of that? That was Iran. I was the senior person, except for the ambassador in the country. They took me down there to see it all and to interview the crew members of the ship. Why? Because the U.S. State Department said, you guys, you Israelis are just spinning it again. You're just making a mountain out of a molehill. Go back to sleep, was basically the response from our State Department. So the Israelis drugged me down there to see it. I called back, and there was a bit more interest in it when they heard that it was the real deal. Well, now you don't have to dial twice to get the interest of our U.S. State Department when you have the Iranian president who's talking about nuclear weapons thought to have them perhaps within 2 years. It's an incredible dilemma we have for our country and for our world. And people might say, well, 2 years, that's not an imminent danger. You've heard about the doctrine of preemption. When do you preempt? Do you preempt before it becomes an imminent danger? Or do you preempt before it becomes a huge problem, a huge forest fire a genie that you can't put back in the bottle? These are very real questions that are being debated at the highest levels of government. And you may say, well, I'm just hanging out here at Iowa State. What difference does it make to me? You're in the world. And as a member of this world, you, your children, and your grandchildren are going to be involved in this, whether you want to or not, whether the United States wants to or not. And so it's good that you're here tonight to think a bit about some of this. Okay, next. Is this a holy war? I know some of you have asked that question in your own mind. Is it a holy war? It is a holy war. Yes, it is a holy war, but maybe not the way you would think. It's a holy war in that the primary conflict is within Islam. Islam is very conflicted. Look at the Sunnis and the Shia in Iraq. Look at Sunnis and Shia in other parts of the world. There have been more Sunni Shia deaths by a factor of 10 than there have been of U.S. soldiers or other soldiers. Probably a factor of 100 if you really figured it out. So the point is, Islam itself is very conflicted. There's internal strife, and it's going to take decades and perhaps centuries, because this has gone on since the 900s, at least. And then if you read your scriptures, you might even say it started at Cain and Abel. So whatever you trace, it goes back a long ways. And therefore, it's within Islam, and it's going to take a long time to sort it out. Now, the next thing is that, yes, there is collateral damage. Sometimes, instead of striking at one another, they strike directly at Christians and Jews and Western decadence overall. You don't notice them striking that ski slope in UAE, but you notice them striking at Western decadence when it's represented by the infidels. And then contributing factors, you could probably take it back to the sacking of Baghdad in 1391 for you history buffs. which was the beginning of a decline of the Muslim culture, which led the world in those days in the development of mathematics and science and English, and I say English, literature and language development. It was incredible. The Muslim culture just developed so much of that. And since those Middle Ages, there's been a real decline. And of recent, you have the 48 War. How is it that the nation of Israel, against tens of nations, Arab nations, how did they win that? How did they win in 67? How did they win in 73? What about the Iran-Iraq War? What about the Sino-Indian War? There have been a number of wars that have had Islamic or Muslim involvement, and it just didn't turn out the way the math would have you think it would turn out. And so if you want to say I need to be careful here, but maybe a bit of a Rodney Dangerfield complex, when you keep running at it and you keep getting smashed for some reason. That has a lot to do with the psyche of the current Islamic fundamentalists as they seek to do some things. Now, let's talk about those things real quick. We're going to keep ripping here. So what does it mean to me? I've said that terrorism is an asymmetric form of war, attacks the human soul, attacks the human spirit. If it targets the human spirit, then I would say that there are spiritual solutions. Okay, I'm not here tonight to talk about spiritual solutions, but you need to know there are spiritual solutions. And you need to be considering what this all means to you, because this, as I said, there's an incredible spiritual dimension to it. Some relevant questions: how strong is our national resolve? Where does resolve come from? How about the freedoms we enjoy? How do we preserve those? How do we fortify our souls and our spirits for the challenges ahead? I would maintain that every country has a spiritual infrastructure, a moral infrastructure. We recognize the electrical, the energy grid, the infrastructure that allows us to have light, the transportation infrastructure that allows us to put bread on the table. We have wonderful infrastructures: the military, the political, the social, the economic. All of those are important, but Napoleon said the moralist to the physical is 3:1. Meaning the moral aspect of a lot of these things is even more important than the physical. And so if you're looking at the life of a person or the life of a nation, it is critical to recognize our nation has a spiritual infrastructure. The morale, the morality, the values, the cohesion of families, all of these are part of the spiritual infrastructure, the moral fabric of our country. That is very important to consider as we consider how to defeat terrorism, which is attacking the spirit, the soul, which is attacking our staying power as people and as a nation, as a culture. Next, please. Okay, I'm going to skip through this. The enemy is dangerous. Increasing ambitions, ever-increasing capabilities, unprecedented ability to affect world events with global ramifications. You got weapons proliferation, info tech, and then you've got a package of grievances, perceived grievances at least. So, do we have to fight the war now? Can we wait? Why bother? Next. Well, this is Al-Qaeda's plan. This was intercepted, a transmittal between Zawahiri and Osama. 4 phases. You can see it: expel American influence from Iraq and the Arabian Peninsula, remove secular governments, eliminate Israel and purge Jewish and Christian influence, and expand the Muslim empire to historical significance. This is not myth, this is the real deal. Next. Okay? Expel America. They want to win in Iraq, they need to win in Iraq. It's the first phase of their battle plan. If they don't win in Iraq, they don't have a sanctuary from which to do the next phase, which is next. Extending the jihad, meaning killing the infidels, wave to the neighboring countries of the Middle East. And thirdly, destroying Israel. And fourthly, establish the historical caliphate, if that name rings a bell. The caliphate was their zenith of the Muslim empire. By 1500, it says it includes and Southeast Europe. And in 900, it included Spain and portions of France and Italy. The point is they want to reestablish this grand empire that they once had. And as it says, the enemy's focused on the history of the Muslim world, which drives much of the extremist ideology. Okay? Now, that's their plan. And George Bush has said it's going to be a long war. It's going to be long for a number of reasons. The enemy is truly committed to it. He's committed to a long war, and he's articulated goals that will last decades. Next slide, Jim. George Bush. The Islamic radical threat of this century greatly resembles the bankrupt ideology of the last. He's talking about communism. The murderous ideology of the Islamic radicals, again, he's using that term new. Islamic radicals is a great challenge of our century, yet in many ways this fight resembles the struggle against communism in the last century. You've got some comparisons there. I won't take time. The bottom line is it takes patience and time to marginalize an ideology such as this. What are the implications of quitting and failure? Well, just look at the big red blob. The big red blob is sitting on top of 70% of the world's oil supply. The big red blob is clearly a precedent to much more impact on the United States and other Western culture. Douglas MacArthur in World War II said there's no substitute for victory. I would offer that for us, there's no substitute for victory in the global war on terror. And we owe it to future generations to stay the course. Okay, next please. Now, that's been fast. I water skied through that, but I wanted to give you the whole skeleton, and you can add meat to the bones along the way, and I can do some question and answer. But we said evil empires are a world at war, the enemy is real, the stakes are high. Religion and spiritual issues are an integral part of this. It is a holy war, but it has different dimensions than they might connote. It's important for us to know why and what we believe. And then finally, it's a long war, and our national survival depends upon our response. Now, that's just sort of laying out the problem. I haven't laid out the solutions. That wasn't the subject of the lecture. Hopefully I've convinced you that this is worth a lot of bother on our part. And it is worth it when you compare the cost of not doing anything downstream. And you will certainly pay the cost downstream. I will pay the cost, and future generations will pay the cost. So let me wrap and say, what are your questions? And I'm glad to answer questions about the details of this, or I'm glad to answer questions about lighter things. I have 4 grandchildren. Thank you for asking that question. They're 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, no, you didn't ask that? Okay, go ahead. Questions? Man, did I depress you all that bad? Yes, sir.
You talk about it being a very religious issue. So how does North Korea figure into this? Because they aren't radical Islamic, but you're talking about the civil war out there.
Right. The question, just so you know, was how does North Korea figure into this? Because they're not radical Islam. Al Qaeda is good at morphing. They seek how to take advantage of vacuums in one form or another and leverage it. There's good evidence that Al Qaeda and radical Islamic governments are in close collusion with North Korea, first of all. And Kim Jong-il is crazy enough to buy into that. So one, the proposition that there's no connection is probably not correct. Secondly, it's just another point of instability in our world, nuclear instability, that allows for the risk, the stakes, to be much, much higher than they would be otherwise. If we were just dealing with Al Qaeda worldwide, and we didn't have a North Korea, we didn't have an Iran, the problem would be much easier. But when in Korea, the expression we use there is readiness never takes a day off. One night, I got a phone call in the middle of the night, and in about 20 minutes, we went from 0 to 60 because the two North Korean, South Korean navies were sparring in the Japan Sea, and in that 20-minute period, the South Koreans had jets headed toward the border and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. So it just can happen like that. So it's a point of instability. It's very serious, and it's a wild card that's not good for the world. It's doubly bad in light of all the others. Sort of getting your question? Yeah, thanks. Okay. Who else? Questions? You good? Okay. Anybody else? All right. Well, let me thank you for the honor to come here. I know that particularly in a lecture that gives the problem and not all the solutions, that you might say, well, where do I go from here? The first step in dealing with any problem is to be somewhat informed about it. So consider yourself, let's consider ourselves better off than we were an hour ago. And then you yourself have to wrestle individually, and then we have to wrestle collectively with how we deal with this. Yes, sir, question?
I wonder if you could give us your thoughts on a situation that has been in existence for 33 years. We had an oil embargo back in 1973.
Right.
And that should have been a warning sign across the port bow to this country and its leaders. In that 33 years, nobody has done anything that I've seen very concrete to work on our energy independence. So now today we are even in a more crucial stage where our survivability, livelihood, and everything else is pretty much attached to that. What would happen if we added that independent energy source stuff and we're in effect today? So we're not relying so much on that part of the world.
Yeah. Well, I think your question provides the answer. Wish it were that we had developed more energy independence. When I talk about spiritual infrastructure, part of spiritual infrastructure is to defer gratification. And our country has not been willing in recent to defer gratification. And as a result, instead of developing tertiary oil techniques, developing solar power, developing safe nuclear power as alternatives for fuel, even developing alternative fuel oil recovery techniques, all of that would have been deferred gratification, but it would have been an investment in our future and our independence in the future, and we would have been much better off. So, yes, sir.
There was a lecture here last night over in one of the engineering buildings. He was talking about the reason that wasn't done is because of, quote, economics. That we didn't do that because we have to have this immediate economic cost, whatever you want to call it. So it was almost a catch-22 that we didn't look at ourselves when we just said.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And it's economics, but it's not economics we've been forced into. It's been our choice. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to be hanging around, and then I would say also that tomorrow night I'll be talking a bit more about solutions, and I'll be going to Crew tomorrow night somewhere. There's something called Crew, and Crew is the local Campus Crusade for Christ. Okay, and I'll talk more about what I think solutions are there. So sorry to leave you hanging, but that's my charter, my remit tonight. God bless each one of you. Thank you for what you're doing. You're great Americans. Keep on keeping on, because you are the next greatest generation. I believe in you. I see it every day. And I'll see you around campus. Okay? Take care. Bye.
You can all hold on just 1 second before y'all run out of here. The gentleman will be hanging around for a few more minutes, so if you guys want to maybe with him, feel free to do so. Again, for those of you who are in the military, active duty, guard, reserve, retired, or in ROTC, again, tomorrow evening the general will be talking to you specifically about some other issues, leadership and other issues like that. There's some flyers again out here on this table. Grab one on your way out. But yeah, if you're a little nervous about asking the general some questions out in public, feel free to come up and meet with them. And thank you again all for coming, and have a good night.
Airports take care of the sky.